So I just had a fantastic trip to Cuba. So while everything was fresh in my mind, I wanted to give you 10 tips that U.S. citizens should know about traveling to Cuba. I'll be referring to my notes back and forth, but I really think these are some things that will help you prepare and have the best time possible with your wonderful experience in Cuba. So here we go. Group these recommendations into a couple of different categories. So the first one is general, just some general things you need to know before you go. Communications is the second category. Money is the third category. Hotels and accommodations is the fourth category. Bathrooms is the fifth category. Things to look out for is the sixth category. And as mentioned, I've got a couple of bonus tips I'd like to add on top that would be interesting for you. So the first one, the general requirements for going to Cuba as a U.S. citizen. I'd like to emphasize that if your nationality is another foreign country, that things may be different for you. But there's two important things that need to happen in order for you to be able to travel to Cuba. The first one is when you make your airline accommodation. I personally ended up flying on Delta out of Miami. It's just a little over an hour flight from Miami. It's really very simple to do, very easy to do. And through the Delta website, they actually guide you through the requirements that you need to have in order to be able to travel to Cuba as a U.S. citizen. The first thing to know is that technically you can't travel to Cuba as a tourist. There are 12 specific reasons that are allowable under the U.S. government for you to travel. I'll link that description below that you can take a look at. But the main category that people go over on is called support for the Cuban government, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Basically, you're going to be staying at local places, you're going to be going to restaurants, you're going to be supporting the local economy. So that's very important. Look at those requirements. Make a selection based on what they're going to be doing, and make sure that you fill out all the forms accordingly. The actual tourist card, again, there was a link that was provided through the Delta site as I made my booking. You will have to get a tourist visa. I used the Delta site. I had that expedited to my home, and I think the cost for that was about $125. And that arrived on time. It's basically a small pink form. You get it, you fill it out, and you will keep that form with you until you leave Cuba. And when you leave Cuba, they'll actually take that form from you at that time. The second thing that you will need is something on a website called Beggars, and it's basically a registration. You can only do this online 48 hours in advance of your trip to Cuba, and it will ask you certain basic information, and it will also ask you some COVID questions, so vaccinations, for example, for those types of things. So you will need to have that completed. And when you finish that, you will actually get a PDF document back in your email. I highly recommend you print that document out and keep it with you at all times. There will be a QR code on there that will indicate to the local Cuban government that you've completed that process, and it has all the information in it. So those are the first two tips, the Cuban tourist visa, and the second thing was the viajeros. So moving to the next category is communications. There, I will put a link in the description below, but through the Cuban cell phone company, which is called CubaCell, you do have the ability to get a Cuban SIM card, and that's a very easy process. It's about $39. You have to do that in advance before you get to Cuba. And in the Havana airport, anyway, I can't speak any of the other airports, at least in the Havana airport, when you get there, there's a kiosk that's staffed by local people. You show them your registration where you've gotten a SIM card. It will actually assist you to put the SIM card in your phone, and bam, within 5 minutes, I had local cell phone service in Cuba, and that worked. I was there. There is a limit in terms of the data that comes with the package, but that is refillable online. I actually did have to refill it one time online while I was there, just because I ended up using the data pretty heavily for a number of different things. I would also mention here that WhatsApp is used very extensively in the country, and to be able to have that and to be able to communicate to taxi drivers, which I'll get to in a few minutes, is important. So Cuba Cell is great. Next point has to do with Wi-Fi. Typically, the hotels will have Wi-Fi. Can't guarantee you how fast it will be. The hotel that I stayed in did have Wi-Fi. It was at a very slow speed, but it was sufficient for limited browsing. So having that cell phone connection to be able to rely on helps a lot. There is also public Wi-Fi that's available in a lot of parks. In order to access it, you will need a Wi-Fi card that is, I believe it was $1 for 1 hour. I purchased 2 hours of Wi-Fi access while I was there, and again, I picked that up in the same Cuba Cell kiosk when I came in. However, I did not use that at all the entire time between having the cell phone connection and having the Wi-Fi connection in the hotel. That was sufficient for all my communicative needs. So that's the third and the fourth points. Cell phone service through Cuba Cell, highly recommended. And then the fourth thing is the Wi-Fi situation. Topic number 5 and 6 has to do with money. One thing you should know is there is an official exchange rate, and then there is a unofficial, a black market exchange rate between US dollars and Cuban pesos. And at the time that I visited, the official exchange rate was $1 US is 110 Cuban pesos. The unofficial exchange rate was $1 US is 350 Cuban pesos. So there's quite a difference, over 3 times the amount. US dollars are accepted very widely in Cuba and Havana, so really no issue at all using US dollars. I would recommend that you bring smaller bills, really nothing over 50 I would recommend. And then also brought quite a number of $1 bills to be able to use for tips for service personnel. You'll find that those $1 bills will go very well. And as far as exchanging money, what I would recommend is the hotel or the place you're staying. We'll get to that in just a second. They can really help you find the best exchange rate. So I would exchange a little bit at a time just to have some Cuban pesos. But again, US dollars are widely accepted, but you definitely need to make sure that you know what exchange rate you're getting before you spend the US dollars, because lots of times they will say, yes, they'll accept it, but then they'll accept it at the official rate, which is 110 or whatever it is at the time that you're there, and that could have a significant impact. The other point about money is that they do not accept U.S. credit cards, so you need to bring sufficient cash. When I was down a week, I actually brought a little bit over 1,000 US, and with all the excursions and everything, I still had about $200 left over coming back. So really not that much finishing, but definitely bring more cash than you're going to need, because you will not be able to get any cash on the island once you're there. And the other point to bring up is taxis and transportation. Definitely make sure to talk to the taxi driver and understand if they accept US dollars, what the exchange rate is, and that the taxi fare is inclusive for your entire party. If you have 2 people, 4 people, whatever it might be, and make sure it's not per person, and you know exactly what the cost is going to be. So that's very important before you take the taxi trip. That you get all of that worked out. And I would also recommend, with regards to transportation, that you really find a good, reliable taxi driver, someone that you can trust, maybe someone that speaks English if you need to do that, and pre-book that person for any excursions that you might want to make. That's what I did when I was down there. We had a group. We actually ended up using 2 or 3 different people. They were all connected. They all did an excellent job and gave us great advice. And many of the taxi drivers as well are tour guides. They're very knowledgeable about the local country and some of the attractions and where to go and who to talk to. And a lot of them have personal connections with some of these locations. It can really help open doors, and I think that's a great thing. So number 5 and number 6 are currency exchange and taxis and transportation services. Next, number 7 and 8 have to do with hotels and accommodations in general. What you should know is what's important is that all of the hotels in Cuba are owned by the Cuban government, and there is a blacklist issued by the U.S. Department of State about hotels that U.S. citizens cannot officially stay at. So I will put a link to that. Make sure that you take a look at that and you know exactly where you can stay and where you can't. I would highly recommend to use TripAdvisor and Expedia. I use those 2 websites very extensively for all of my travels, nationally and internationally, and really find great advice and definitely look at the good reviews and the bad reviews, and that will really help you make an informed decision of where to stay. That's the process I went through, and when I went over, I knew that I wanted to stay in Old Havana, Havana Vieja, and looking at all of them, I ended up staying at a family-owned place called Residencia Santa Clara. I will do a more extensive review of that later, but it's really a family-owned place that was extremely happy with, very friendly staff. They had a small cafe and bar. They would really help with anything that you needed to do to make sure that got taken care of in a safe and friendly and extremely courteous way. Something else I would mention just on the hotels is something known as Casa Particulares, which are basically family-owned residences where they rent out a room or in some cases an entire apartment, but it's affiliated with the family. Definitely look at those and look at the reviews, look at the amenities that they might have, and make an informed decision about what you want to do. But definitely do your homework, find out where you want to stay, book it, and then the other thing I did was I was also in contact with the hotel in advance before I got there to be able to organize transportation. I did arrange a airport pickup for myself, and the taxi driver was there waiting, had a signed board with my name on it. I was able to get to that right away after we got there, so definitely highly recommend. That's number 7. And number 8, as mentioned, the Cuban government owns all of the hotels in Cuba, and U.S. citizens cannot stay there. They do not accept U.S. credit cards. So some of them will accept Cuban pesos or U.S. dollars, and some of them will not. One example was I really wanted to get to the Ambos Mundos Hotel to be able to visit Ernest Hemingway's hotel room that he used to stay at there, and they would only accept a Cuban or a European credit card. That was the only way, so I had to arrange it through my taxi driver to be able to pay the entry fee, and then I reimbursed the taxi driver back for it. So it's a little bit hit and miss, and definitely ask before you get committed. Another example was the Hotel Nacional in Havana, very famous place, especially during the 30s, big mob hangout, and they had a fantastic cigar lounge and also a rooftop bar. And even though the Cuban government owns the hotel, the rooftop bar did accept U.S. dollars, so we were able to take advantage of that. Sunset, something I would highly recommend. A great place to go, super place to go. So again, that's number 7 and number 8. Number 9, moving right along, has to do with bathrooms. So the bathrooms in Cuba, typically you will find that there is no toilet paper. So I would highly recommend that you bring toilet paper with you and have that available. A lot of times there will be an attendant outside the bathroom that will collect a small fee, $100, which would maybe be the equivalent of 500 or 1,000 pesos, Cuban pesos, and they will help with that. And basically, that money goes to keeping the bathrooms clean. And likewise, most of the bathrooms do not have hand towels to dry your hands off with. I did find electric hand dryers in a number of places. And one other thing that you might find is that a lot of the toilets actually don't have toilet seats. So keep that in mind as well. So that's number 9, bathrooms. And number 10, what to look out for. And this really gets into scammers and street beggars. So the economy in Cuba is pretty tough. As many people told us, the typical working wage of a person in Cuba is probably $15 to $20 per month, something like that. Cuban government does provide certain basic staples for households and families and that type of thing, but it's really very limited. So the Cuban people are very creative in trying to find ways to supplement their income. And so you will find a lot of people that will try to get your business, to get your money. The way it will typically go, of course, they will spot you immediately and they will come up to you in the typical line, hey, where are you from? To try to get a conversation started. And then, what are you looking for? How long are you in town for? Do you want to buy some Cuban cigars? Do you want to buy some rum? Do you want to go to social club, something like that? So just be aware that you're going to be hit up by many people, and typical response, just no gracias, just to be cordial with them, smile and say no thank you. But just warn you, if you do get a conversation started, it could last a while. And I've seen and heard a lot of stories where they want to take you to somebody's restaurant and realize that when they do that, they're going to get a kickback from the restaurant for taking you there. A lot of times they will want you to pay them instead of the restaurant. So again, do your homework, be prepared for that. And then the other thing with Beggars is that there are a lot of sidewalk cafes and restaurants in Havana. So some of these sidewalk restaurants and seating right next to the sidewalk. So as you're sitting there eating, people will come up to you and ask you for money. And I remember in one case when we were at Hotel Inglaterra, just having something, cold water to drink, beggars would come up to you right from the sidewalk and actually hold their little change cup and jingle it right in front of you. So it's a very tough situation, and you really feel a lot of compassion for the people of Cuba and what they're going through. They're really a highly creative group of people, and really enjoyed the Cubans that we met and we spent time with. But they've also got a very tough situation with the blockade. Tourism in general is just very down, so they're really working to try to do whatever they can to be able to get a couple extra dollars so that they can survive. One individual at the restaurant we went to he was a doctor, and he was supplementing his income by working in a restaurant part-time for tips. And so very industrious, very kind group of people. Just be aware of that. So that's my 10 tips. And as promised, I do have the 3 bonus tips I would like to tell you about. And the first one is bring things to give away. So when I went down, I actually brought some toothpaste kits. I brought about 10 of those. I brought several coloring books, some lollipops and candy and things like that. And look for opportunities to give those away. Let me make a recommendation that if you're going to do that in private, or do that in such a way that a lot of other kids don't see that. Because if they see you giving that stuff away, you will immediately be attacked by all of them, wanting something from you. So definitely be very discreet about that. But it's a great way, and the kids that I did give things to were just super appreciative of it and really enjoyed that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, on the way out, allow plenty of time at the airport. I would definitely suggest 2 to 3 hours would be recommended. When I left out of Havana, there were quite a number of people trying to get out. A lot of them had issues or problems with their passports that caused quite a delay. There were also some medical situations that happened that created some delays. So definitely allow plenty of time so that you can get through, and low stress. Just take it easy. Understand it's going to take time. It's going to be, and realize that that's just part of the situation you're going to deal with. And the other part of that of the departure is there is a very worthwhile VIP lounge at the airport. Costs $35 per person. And as you go through security and you go through the magnetometer, the VIP lounge is down the stairs on the left-hand side. I'll include a couple of pictures of it, but there's plenty of food, plenty to drink, nice comfortable chairs, power outlets, and most importantly, there's air conditioning. Because you're not going to get that out in the terminal once you get to your gate. And from the VIP lounge to your gate is only 2 minutes, 3 minutes at the most. So definitely worthwhile, and we definitely highly recommend that. And then the final tip that I would offer you as a bonus tip is as a U.S. citizen, you are not allowed to bring Cuban cigars or Cuban rum back into the United States. So no matter what they tell you in Cuba, you cannot bring it back in. So that's my 10 tips. That's my 3 bonus tips for U.S. citizens traveling to Cuba. So I hope you find that of value. And if you do, I would really like if you could give me a big thumbs up and subscribe. I would really appreciate that. And I would also like to hear if you have any other comments or suggestions for U.S. citizens that are traveling to Cuba that might be beneficial. So that's all for now. So my next main vlog from Cuba will be about the beautiful area of the Vinales Valley. So please stay tuned for that. Working on it. We've got some fantastic video, and especially some of the photos are really fantastic. I think you'll enjoy them. So stay tuned.